The words were calm, almost polite, which made them worse. Ethan felt them hit before he fully understood them. The house smelled like roasted chicken and old wood polish, the same smell it had carried for years. Sunday dinner, a routine, a place where Ethan had learned to keep his voice low and his feelings quiet. He looked at his father's face, searching for a sign that this was a joke. There was none. Dad sat straight, hands folded, eyes firm, already decided. Across the table, Lucas leaned back in his chair like he'd been waiting for this moment. His mouth curved into a smile that tried to look humble but failed. Ethan swallowed. He had bought that SUV with his own money. Early mornings, late nights. Second job he never talked about. That car had been his escape and his proof. Proof that he could build something without help. Deserves it, Ethan said. His voice stayed calm, but his chest burned. Dad sighed, the way he always did when Ethan questioned him. Your brother needs it more than you. He's trying to get his life together. That sentence pulled old memories to the surface. Lucas crashing through life and calling it learning. Dad cleaning up the mess. Ethan standing off to the side. Invisible unless something went wrong. Ethan turned to Lucas. Do you still have that suspended license? The air went still. Lucas laughed once, sharp and quick. Why are you still bringing that up? Because it matters, Ethan said. Dad's jaw tightened. Enough. That was handled. Handled. That word followed Ethan his whole life. Mistakes were handled when Lucas made them. When Ethan made them, they were lessons. I paid for the SUV, Ethan said. It's mine. You're being selfish, Dad? Replied without hesitation. Family shares. Ethan almost smiled at that. Family shares, but family never seemed to share with him. Not attention, not trust, not benefit of the doubt. His mother stared at her plate. She always did when things turned sharp. Silence had become her shield. Lucas leaned forward now, elbows on the table. You don't even use it that much. Need it for work. What work? Ethan asked. Dad slammed his hand down, not hard, but loud enough to end the talk. Discussion is over. Ethan stood. His chair scraped against the floor. His hands shook, but not with fear. With clarity. I'm not giving him my car, he said. Dad looked at him like he didn't recognize him. Then you're leaving us no choice. Ethan didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. He grabbed his jacket and left before his voice betrayed him. The night air felt colder than it should have. He drove home with the radio off, his thoughts loud. At every red light, his phone buzzed. Messages he didn't open. Calls he didn't answer. At home. He sat on the edge of his couch, staring at the wall. His phone vibrated again. A voicemail from his mother. Your father is very upset, she said softly. It's worried about you. It's worried about you. He thinks you're not thinking clearly. Ethan let out a slow breath. Not thinking clearly. Phrase cut deeper than anger. It suggested weakness, instability, something wrong with him. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. Firm, professional. Ethan froze. He already knew. He opened the door to two police officers. Their faces were neutral. Calm, sir. We received a call requesting a wellness check. Ethan felt heat rush to his face. His own father had done this. Not a conversation. Not a warning. Call. I'm fine, Ethan said. They stepped inside, asked questions, glanced around. They saw a clean apartment. No chaos, no danger. Just a man standing still, trying not to crack. They apologized before leaving. The door closed. The silence screamed. Ethan stood there for a long time, hands clenched, heart pounding. Something inside him shifted. The hurt didn't explode. It settled. Hardened. Dad hadn't just taken Lucas's side. He had turned Ethan into a problem to be controlled. It's a risk to be reported. Ethan sat down slowly. He replayed the dinner in his mind. Dad's certainty. Lucas's smile. His mother's silence. This wasn't new, it was simply louder. Lucas had always taken. Ethan had always given. And when Ethan finally said no, the system turned against him. That night, sleep didn't come. He stared at the ceiling, counting the ways he had stayed quiet over the years. The times he had let things go. The apologies he made when he wasn't wrong. By morning, the pain had sharpened into focus. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He wanted balance. He wanted the truth to matter. He wanted the rules to apply to everyone, not just him. Somewhere between the sunrise and his first cup of coffee, Ethan realized something else. If his family could use the system against him, then the system could also reveal what they had hidden. The thought didn't make him smile, but it stayed, and it grew. The days after that night were heavy. Ethan moved through his apartment in a haze. Every sound felt sharper. Every phone notification made his heart skip. He replayed the dinner over and over in his mind, the way Dad had spoken, the way Lucas had leaned back and smirked, the way his mother had stayed quiet. That silence had been worse than any insult. It had confirmed what Ethan already feared. No one was on his side. Not really. He watched Lucas online, saw the SUV in photos, Lucas laughing with friends as if nothing had happened. That same reckless confidence, the sense that life was a series of soft landings, annoyed him to his core. Every post, every casual smile was a reminder of all the times Ethan had sacrificed and stayed silent. He had obeyed the rules, respected authority, worked tirelessly. And now it didn't matter. Anger simmered first, hot and immediate. But it was quickly joined by something colder. Clarity, focus. He began thinking in terms of patterns, of details others ignored. He knew Lucas was still driving with that suspended license. He knew Dad had quietly handled every past incident, paying fines, making excuses, covering up. Ethan had connections at work that gave him access to public records. He knew how fragile the illusion of control truly was. One mistake, one correct move, and the truth could be exposed. Ethan didn't plan to lash out. This wasn't about revenge for the thrill of it. It was about accountability. But accountability carried its own danger. The question he asked himself constantly was, should he act? Or should he let it go? And every time, the anger whispered, back sharper and louder, they chose him to lose. They chose Lucas over him. They chose to believe in lies and ignore the truth. At night, he sat at his desk, phone in hand, replaying scenarios. He imagined Lucas caught, finally facing the consequences. The image brought a strange satisfaction. He imagined the look on Dad's face when he realized that their careful system of control no longer protected Lucas. But then doubt crept in. The thought of calling authorities on his own brother made his stomach twist. Would he be hurting the boy he had grown up with? Would he cross a line that could never be uncrossed? Ethan remembered his grandmother. Her voice always clear in his memory. What will this give you? He remembered her saying that revenge often leaves more scars than it heals. Could he act without becoming someone he didn't recognize? Could he exact justice without letting anger consume him? He wasn't sure. He also thought about Dad, not as a monster, not yet. Just a man blinded by favoritism and fear. Dad had always protected Lucas, believing that he could fix his mistakes. Ethan realized Dad truly thought he was doing the right thing, even if it hurt Ethan in the process. That didn't excuse it. But it complicated his feelings. He wasn't just angry at Lucas. He was angry at his father, at the system that always favored Lucas. At the childhood that had taught him patience and quiet obedience while rewarding the reckless, he watched. Lucas borrowed the SUV temporarily day after day. Each time the SUV became a symbol of everything Ethan felt he had been denied: recognition, trust, and respect. He imagined ways to expose the truth anonymously, ways to make the law enforce the rules equally, without personal bias. He knew the impact would be real. He knew it would hurt Lucas, But it wasn't about cruelty. It was about fairness. Or at least as close to fairness as he could make it. Sleep became a distant memory. Ethan would lie awake, running through every detail, every option. He considered talking to Dad directly, confronting him with the truth, appealing to his sense of fairness. But he knew that would only lead to more arguments, more dismissals, and probably another accusation of being unstable. No, this had to be done carefully, quietly, strategically. He began taking notes, jotting down times, places, minor violations. He kept them meticulously. Every detail mattered. He analyzed patterns, Lucas's routes, the times he drove the SUV. The times Dad intervened, Ethan realized he had an advantage. He knew the system, knew the weaknesses, knew how the law would respond if someone reported it. He had control now, in a way he never had as a child. Still, he wrestled with morality. Could he justify exposing Lucas? Could he sleep knowing he had caused his own brother's humiliation or legal trouble? What about Dad? Would he ever forgive Ethan for taking matters into his own hands? Or would he see it as a betrayal, the same way he had perceived Ethan's? Defiance at dinner. The questions kept him awake. He paced the apartment, muttering fragments of conversation, imagining scenarios. Each possible outcome twisted in his mind like a storm, pulling him closer and closer to a decision. But it wasn't just about Lucas or Dad anymore. It was about Ethan himself. He realized that staying silent had cost him. It had cost him his pride, his peace, and his confidence. By acting, he wasn't only holding others accountable. He was reclaiming a sense of control over his own life. That thought, as frightening as it was, gave him purpose. He felt a strange clarity, the kind that comes when a decision sharpens the mind. When all distractions fall away and the choice becomes unavoidable, each day the tension built. Ethan's routine was no longer work. Sleep, repeat. It was observation, calculation, mental preparation. Every time he saw Lucas drive the SUV, every time he heard his father talk about responsibility, every time his mother remained silent, it fueled him. The anger wasn't wild anymore. It was precise, focused. He didn't crave revenge for the thrill. He craved balance, truth, justice, whatever name you gave it. Finally, the day arrived. Lucas took the SUV out late at night without permission, unaware that Ethan was watching. The thrill of anticipation made Ethan's chest tight. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the knowledge that the moment had come. He had rehearsed what he would do, how he would act, how he would make the right choice. There was no room for hesitation now. The consequences were real, immediate, and irreversible. And yet, as he sat in the dark, watching the SUV's headlights disappear into the night, he paused. He could still walk away. He could let this pass, could pretend the world was fair and hope Dad would see reason eventually. But he knew, deep down, that would be a lie, which would be surrender. And Ethan didn't surrender anymore. Not to injustice, not to favoritism, not to a family system that had treated him as if his existence was optional. The storm inside him reached its peak. The line between morality and action blurred. He wasn't thinking about hurting anyone. He was thinking about restoring truth. And in that moment, the quiet, cold promise of justice became irresistible. He knew that by the end of the night, nothing would ever be the same. The phone sat on the passenger seat, ready. A single call. One act, one choice. And the weight of all those years, all the betrayals, all the silences, would finally find a release. The tension had built to this point. Ethan's pulse quickened. He clenched his fists. But the decision waited. And he realized that no matter what happened next, he was no longer powerless. This was more than revenge. It was reclamation. Rain fell in sheets that night, slicking the streets with reflections of red and yellow traffic lights. Ethan sat in his own car, engine idling, headlights off, shadowed by the darkness of a quiet street. He watched Lucas as he pulled the SUV. Out of a bar parking lot, careless, confident, unaware that Ethan had been following. His younger brother's smirk, the way he bobbed his head to music. It all made Ethan's chest tighten with a mixture of anger and fear. Lucas didn't see the danger. He never did. But tonight, Ethan would change that. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel. His mind raced. He had rehearsed this moment for days. Every turn, every step, every word he would speak had been planned. This wasn't about malice, it was about accountability. Lucas had broken the rules, ignored the law, and risked lives. Ethan had watched him slide by for years. The system had failed, and now it was his turn to act. He followed Lucas at a distance, careful not to draw attention. Every red light felt like a countdown. Every stop sign, a test. Ethan's pulse pounded as he imagined the consequences. A ticket? A suspension? Perhaps even jail time. He didn't want Lucas hurt, but he wanted the truth to matter. The recklessness had to end. For Lucas. For their father. For himself. The SUV swerved slightly on a curve, brushing close to another car. Ethan's stomach dropped. This was real. He couldn't turn back now. He reached for his phone and dialed. The call connected immediately. Calmly, clearly, he reported the vehicle, the license violation, and the location. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't add emotion. He simply stated the facts. As he hung up, the first red and blue lights appeared in the distance. They flashed across wet pavement, bouncing into Ethan's windshield. He stayed hidden, watching as officers approached. Lucas. The headlights of the SUV reflected off the rain, illuminating the scene in harsh, almost surreal clarity. Lucas stepped out, confused, unaware of how quickly reality had caught up with him. Ethan's heart twisted as he watched the officers speak to Lucas. The confident young man, who had taken so much for granted, now faced something he could not control. Ethan felt a mix of relief and guilt. The scene was exactly what he had planned, yet it felt heavier than he expected. He had imagined the satisfaction of justice, the balance being restored, but now the weight of the action pressed. Down on him. Dad arrived shortly after, storming onto the street. His anger was immediate, his voice booming over the rain. "What's going on here?" he demanded, scanning the scene frantically. He didn't see Ethan crouched in the shadows, silent and deliberate. He saw only the consequences, only Lucas. Confronted with the law, only the chaos he thought he controlled slipping away. Lucas slumped on the curb, head in his hands. The reality of his actions, which he had never truly understood, hit him hard. No excuses. Oh, no parental interference. No easy escape. For the first time, he felt the full weight of responsibility. Ethan watched quietly, noting the collapse of Lucas's usual arrogance. The sight was jarring. He hadn't wanted humiliation, but the universe had its own way of balancing things. The rain continued, soaking everyone, blurring the edges of reality. Ethan's mind raced as he considered the aftermath: court dates, fines, conversations that would follow, and the inevitable family tension. He realized that this wasn't just about Lucas. It was about his father's favoritism, his mother's silence, and the years of overlooked sacrifices. He had acted not out of cruelty, but necessity. He had acted because the system of lies, privilege, and protection had to be challenged. As the officers wrote notes and discussed the violation, Ethan felt a strange emptiness. This wasn't the triumph he expected. The satisfaction he had imagined didn't fully arrive. Instead, there was a clarity, a sobering awareness of what he had done and the irreversible change it had brought. Lucas would face consequences. Dad would confront reality. But Ethan would also have to live with the choice he had made. There was no undoing it. Ethan started his car and drove away slowly, keeping his distance. He didn't want to be seen. He didn't want confrontation. The storm mirrored his emotions, chaotic, cleansing, and unforgiving. He reflected on why he had acted. It wasn't vengeance for the thrill. It was a reclaiming of truth, a statement that recklessness, favoritism, and lies could not go unchecked in his life. Driving through the rain-slicked streets, memories from the past resurfaced. Childhood arguments, ignored warnings, sacrifices unacknowledged. He thought about every time he had chosen patience, every time he had remained silent while Lucas acted without consequences. Each memory added weight to the night's decision. Ethan realized he had reached a turning point. By acting, he was no longer the silent son. He was taking control, even if it meant standing alone. The lights of the city blurred through the windshield, reflections dancing like ghosts of his past frustrations. Ethan thought of Lucas sitting on the curb, wet, confused, realizing that life wasn't as forgiving as he had assumed. He thought of Dad arguing with the officers, his pride wounded, his certainty shattered. Ethan felt a pang of something unexpected, empathy. None of this was easy. None of this was simple. Life was messy, and tonight had shown that truth often. Arrives in inconvenient, painful ways. Ethan parked on a quiet street a few blocks away, the engine ticking as it cooled. He let the rain soak through the windows as he exhaled slowly. His mind replayed every moment to call. The lights, Lucas's shock, Dad's panic. He realized that while the act of holding Lucas accountable was necessary, it didn't erase the years of family tension or fix the underlying problems. It didn't heal wounds. It simply revealed them, stark and undeniable. He knew that the morning would bring consequences he hadn't yet faced. Conversations, questions, perhaps even anger directed at him. He didn't flinch. It acted with intention, not malice. This was not revenge in its rawest, darkest form. It was justice carefully considered, administered in a moment that demanded action. And in that consideration, he felt a measure of control he had never had before. As the rain eased and the first signs of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Ethan felt an unexpected lightness. Not happiness, not victory, but clarity. The world was messy, people were flawed, and life rarely offered perfect outcomes. But for the first time, Ethan had made a choice solely for himself, guided by truth and fairness rather than fear or silence. He started the car again, heading toward home, letting the events settle in his mind. He realized that the climax of this story wasn't Lucas on the curb or Dad's anger. It was the moment he had taken responsibility for action. It's the moment he had broken free from the role of the silent son, and the moment he had seen consequences reach the people who had always acted without them. And though the night had been tense, suspenseful, and morally complex, Ethan understood one thing clearly. This was not an ending. It was a turning point. Life would continue, decisions would have consequences, and he would need to navigate the aftermath with as much care as he had taken to plan tonight. The call had been made. The balance had shifted. And Ethan was finally awake to the fact that accountability, once faced, changes everything.